the most offensive, and I can't believe that you have all these homeschool families that buy into this garbage that this one guy who is not married,
no kids,
who doesn't have any kids, and is going to tell us how to get married and how to raise our kids. Like, this guy has no clue what he's talking about. But yet he's the guru. And dude, did you not think about this at all? Something that we watch, something that's going around on Amazon right now. They're promoting, called Shiny Happy People. Amazon is pushing, and it was so obvious. It was misrepresentations of certain things. It was taking things out of context to spin it their way to make all Christians look stupid and bad.
The Mike Charleston Show.
All right, guys. Well, this is going to be a different episode. We do have a number of new things. We're going to have a movie review at the end here, and we do have an email we're going to answer, I think. And so the movie review, we're going to try to do a Pure Flix movie review once a month. So yay, get ready for that. And Larry's excited about that. Yeah, 2 thumbs up already, right? Well, this one we are going to we're going to talk about a subject, but it's more of not another movie review, but it is a reaction video of something that we watched, something that's going around on Amazon right now. They're promoting, called Shiny Happy People, the Duggar Family Secrets. Now, to be fair, Larry, you've never watched an episode of the Duggar.
Nope, never saw it.
Do you know who the Duggars are?
I do know who they are, yeah.
Right.
Do you know that they have a lot of children?
That I do.
Okay.
Yeah. My mom was all into it. She thought it was great, yeah. But I never watched it. We didn't have a TV either at the time when it was on, so.
Oh, so you were one of the ATIers. Right. Okay. And we only watched one part of one that your parents recorded for us, and we watched it, and they're like, these are just like you guys. These people are like you. And I'm like, they have 3 times the amount of kids that we do.
And I think they were a little more organized.
Very much so. Yes. No offense, but we were not as organized. We had a chore chart, and we had a couple other things. Our supper time wasn't as intense as theirs, and our laundry, as bad as our laundry wasn't as bad as theirs. Yeah, no. That's all I remember from that. And I wasn't. And the reason why we're kind of doing this also is, if you watch the documentary, a docuseries, we're kind of lumped in with all these people at the end, and we'll explain why at the end, since we're on YouTube and we talk about conservative Christianity and things like that. I don't know if I would label myself as a fundie.
No,
but probably everybody else would.
Yeah, I would probably be labeled that, but I wouldn't count myself as that.
You're probably a fundy.
I probably am.
Yeah,
I'm maybe an old fundy dud.
But the other part of this is, and straight up front, don't stop right now and don't watch it. We unless you want to, but don't watch it with your kids.
Right. I was going to say, if you do choose to watch it, you need to be aware there's some language in there there's
some language and some sexual content. There's a good number of sexual content, and the whole issue is sexual content, and which it brings into the Duggar family, and their issues with their son Josh, which is kind of been made known. If you don't know, he's in jail right now for child pornography charges, and amongst other things. not the jail part. He's not in jail for the other things, but he's been accused of a number of different things. A very public affair, or cheating on his wife that was very public. Note to self: don't put your family on TV. It doesn't end up very well.
Yeah, the money's not worth it.
No.
Okay, so before we get into it, what were you thinking before we ever watched it?
Well, I was getting there, but let me also talk about ATI too, because they do talk about ATI and the Duggars.
Well, and also the Institute for Basic Life Principles.
Okay, the Bill Gothard. Basically, Bill Gothard was a big part of this. The ATI, the IBLP.
ATI stands for Advanced Training Institute.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we met a few families along the way that we knew that were ATI. Look, we homeschooled our kids from the very beginning, and we didn't know really many people who did. We had to go to some conventions, and we're picking up some books. We're reading. So early on, people introduced us to ATI. We met some families, and all the kids are like wearing buttoned-up shirts, and they're all in a line and very well disciplined. It seemed
Right,
like,
yeah.
and I was like, well, that's kind of impressive. But honestly, when I looked at them, my first impression was they're robots,
Right. Yeah.
and there's no soul. They don't have any life, and I'm like, they're kind of boring people. And so whatever. And honestly, just we looked into it briefly, and I'm like, that's not us. That's not who we are. I don't think Christianity comes down to a bunch of principles, and that is what they are, principle-based, whatever, religion there. So we knew right away that there was some problems. Then we heard some things and looked into it a little bit, and we knew Bill Gothard was a sleazebag. But anyway, and I actually met him personally.
Did you really?
At a wedding.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, our someone who we're now related to by marriage, his sister got married, and Bill Gothard was there.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
so
Wow. I never knew that.
Yeah.
Did that change your mind when you met
I
him?
met him and didn't even know who he was.
Oh, that's funny.
Right.
Yeah.
Until afterward, and they said, oh, that was Bill Gothard. And I was like, oh, yeah. How about that? So I really don't know. So anyway, we'll get into it a little bit more. But what about you, Larry?
Well, I kind of figured where the angle they were going to take. It was definitely.
What was your, before you go there, what level of ATI did you know?
Well, when I was probably 12, 13, something like that, we went to one of the conferences.
Right.
I think at the time they had two. There was the first one, Institute Basic. At that time, I think it was called Institute for Basic Life Conflict.
Right.
And then you went to the advanced one, which was the second series. But you had to go to the first one first. Anyway, I thought it was weird as a kid. I was like, so this guy is giving family advice.
That's the most bizarre part.
And
man.
he's not married?
Well,
And-
that's the most offensive. And I can't believe that you have all these homeschool families that buy into this garbage that this one guy who is not married,
no kids.
who doesn't have any kids, and is going to tell us how to get married and how to raise our kids. I'm like, this guy has no clue what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But yet he's the guru. And, I'm not trying to offend people that were part of ATI, but like, dude, did you not think about this at all? I don't know. But
I didn't have there were some things later on because we could talk about it later, but my parents, they went from being alcoholics and fighting all the time to new Christians and not knowing anything about, no Bible doctrine or anything. And then the church we're going to at the time, the pastor bought tickets for the family to go to this conference. And
well, that's what you were thinking, why this kind of grew in the late 70s, early 80s, was because a lot of people were disgusted by some of the liberalism that was out there in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
And so the conservative movement came in and boom, he had all these principles.
People at the time, in fact, the movie, the Jesus Revolution, what was it?
Jesus Revolution.
Yeah, it was that time period. Bill Gothard, his ministry kind of exploded at that time, late 70s, early 80s. You had people that were coming out of the hippie movement, Jesus movement, and they were the drug culture of the 60s and the free love, all that.
Right.
And so they were getting saved and they were looking for something wholesome to get back to.
Give me something to believe in.
Right, yeah. Exactly. And so Bill Gothard was offering these principles for family and everything.
It probably did work somewhat.
Well,
it gave structure to, maybe they didn't know how to do it. And people are looking for answers, and this guy had all the answers. And trust me, he'll let you know that he had all the answers. And it still amazes me, though, that people would go to a guy who was single and wasn't married. But whatever. So anyway, what was our thoughts? What was our expectations? Is that what you were saying before?
Yeah, before we ever watched it, what were you thinking?
It's kind of unfair because my son told me a little bit about it, and that's kind of why we had a couple people get our opinion about this, and I'm like, I don't really want to watch it, but I'm like, you know what? Let's go ahead. Let's watch it and see what we think about it. And I wasn't let down. It is pretty much what I thought it was, but he told me a little bit about it, and it's so it's kind of unfair. I didn't really. My expectations were really low. It's put on by Amazon, for crying out loud. So,
yeah, I mean, they were biased, I will say. But it was what I expected.
Okay.
What did you think, Sarah?
Well, when I first heard about it, before Jeremiah talked about it, I didn't like it from the beginning. I
You don't like attack pieces?
Well, yeah, I just felt like here's some more people that are going to try to bash Christians and conservative families and people that are trying to raise their kids in a godly way, trying to have, good families. And so we're just going to look for things that we can do to rip more families apart. Right. So I was just like, I'm not interested. But
so then did it meet your expectations?
Yeah, it was what I thought.
Okay. Well, because in the middle of all this, because they do have, they did talk about the agenda, besides the agenda that was obviously there, but there was a story to talk about. There was a story of the Duggars. So the whole point was about the Duggars and their rise on cable television and their influence of their very Christian, not just Christian, but very fundamentalist views. Yeah. Which led to Bill Gothard. They were saying, well, where did they get all this? And it pointed right back to Bill Gothard. Yeah. They had been to one of these seminars. They got heavily involved in it. And their whole life was a living example of what Bill Gothard would have loved, know?
Yeah.
So that's why the connection there. They brought the issues that were going on with the Duggars, which, let's be fair, I don't know if their family was struggling or having a bad time. They probably were a very happy family. But the Josh Duggar thing just blew up, and it was on national television, so it's very, very public, and that's a lot to deal with. And like even the girls had to go on national TV, and they were saying it wasn't like that bad. They're making him sound like he raped us and all that, but it's still, it's still a problem. And but if it was, if this happened in some other family, you could take care of it properly and deal with it, but it's on TV.
Right.
And it's out of your control at that point. And he could have kept his son where he was, but he brought him back for the TV show.
For the TV show, yeah.
And so if all things being equal, TV show's off and he's not there, they keep their son away and make him do what he's doing over there and keep him away. And maybe he gets help. Maybe he gets better, and maybe he doesn't come back and he's back in the limelight. And which doesn't help. So no. I felt bad for Josh Duggar, actually. I mean, I know that sounds terrible. How can you feel bad for?
Well, no, I do too, because they're all of them, because their childhood, they grew up on TV with the world watching them.
Right. Like his problems are so public.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, there's people I work with that have had histories and no one knows it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. If they weren't on TV, who would know about his struggles?
Right. Exactly.
Nobody. I mean, other than maybe his immediate family and friends, but other than that.
And also, like his sisters, the ones that were abused and all that, to have that in public, all that is just terrible and unfortunate. And, their story is their story. And I don't think anybody's going to be like, liar. Yeah. Maybe there are people, I don't know.
Well, to me, I wonder how much of it, at what point did the money become a big factor?
Oh, it probably was a big factor from the very beginning.
Right.
I mean, they were saying that they're making like $850,000 a year by doing this, and the kids didn't get any of the money, so Jim Bob's got to keep the thing going. Yeah. And I don't know how many seasons it was, like 7 seasons or something like that. We have an in-studio audience, that's why I look over here. And then they branched out to a couple of other different things, so they were making money. It was definitely a moneymaker.
Yeah.
And not only that, but probably books. They
did books.
No one knew who they were. If they wrote a book, no one cares. Maybe a couple hundred people, kind of like Sarah's book. But once they're on national TV, all of a sudden they're probably selling millions of books.
Right.
And they're very famous. So fame and fortune, it's not worth it for one. Let's just
Well, but beyond the Duggars, they did also go into a lot of other people that have dealt with abuse. And I mean, for those people, it is sad. And I mean, I didn't like the agenda pushed in the series, but I do feel sorry for people that have gone through some terrible things.
It's brutal. The problem I have with, one of the big problems I had with this piece, this, what do they call it, docuseries, it's 4 episodes, it's very long, is that they're experts. They supposedly had these experts. They're all IBLP people.
Right.
And anytime you have an X, you know that it's not good.
Right.
Like if you're going to do a piece on it, you might want to get a person with a more balanced approach to it and be like, this is the problems. And I don't have an agenda. Here's the problems with it. Like I could have got on there and be like, here's the problems with ATI. And I homeschool,
right.
And I enjoy homeschooling. But here are the real problems with that I see in ATI. It's overly controlling. It's legalistic.
Right.
It has all these issues that I could see. And, but it's these ex-IBLP, and it's like, well, what else are they going to say?
Well, I was thinking about that because the people that were on it as the ex-IBLP, one of the things I don't think they considered, because they're all looking at the negative, but at the time, I think their parents, possibly, I don't know, they didn't show their parents, but if you asked their parents, I bet they would say they were trying to they thought they were, at the time, they were doing the right thing for their kids.
Sure.
And instead of kids saying, my parents tried, they thought they were doing the right thing. It just turned out bad.
Well, that wasn't this episode. This was,
I know, but
because they would have been like, we tried. And I said, yes, but this program, and that was the whole point of this show, was to show that this program creates monsters.
It does. The big takeaway I got, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but the big takeaway I got from this is that's what happens when Christians leave their authority of the scriptures and they start following, because the Bible says all scripture is given by inspiration of God and it's profitable for doctrine. That's the first thing. It doesn't say principles. They're not even mentioned. So when you leave that and you start following principles, rather than having the foundation on the scriptures and foundation on correct Bible doctrine.
Right, because principles can be good.
Yeah, they can be good. They
can help,
but
they're not the answer.
They're not, yeah.
And that is that is what ATI
exactly.
is. And
it's all principles. And they use the Bible, but most of the time they take it out
the scriptures are way out of context. I'm like, we had to go through for a Bible study. We had someone want us to watch seminar on the DVD and videos, and I couldn't get to the end. I'm like, look, we got to stop. This is enough. This is enough. This is terrible. It's not well presented. It's the information. I might agree with some of the things, but how they come about it's weird.
Yeah, it's very
just
weird,
and it's very controlling. And so if you get a man that already has issues, and all of a sudden you give him the authority that, hey, you are God's authority basically, and it can be unchecked. And so this isn't a denomination. This is not a church.
No.
It's a what do they call those things?
Parachurch.
Yeah, it's a parachurch type thing. Yeah. Yes, they want you to go back into the churches, but there's really, what's the accountability? That if I treat my wife and children like garbage, or I have to present my children in such a way that they look perfect and they can't get out of line, and if they do, I'm going to smack them. And they know they're going to get it when they get home. Well, that's a fear-based religion, and we usually call that a cult of some sort. And yes, this was a cult of some sort. It wasn't exactly a cult because they still believed in Jesus, but they had a cult leader, and his name was Bill Gothard. And I don't think there's anybody denying that part of it. That part of the documentary, I guess, is what kind of one of your questions, right? Was did you feel like any of it was accurate or whatever?
Right.
Well, the stories are their stories. I'm not going to call them liars necessarily, but their portrayal of ATI was a little bit jaded,
Oh, absolutely.
But
Yeah, but it's interesting because you say that you didn't really care for the docuseries and didn't like what they had to say necessarily, but you you don't really like Bill Gothard
Not at
or
all.
ATI, IBLP, whatever, whatever part of it you want to talk about.
Right.
So it's like, so then why did you not like what they had to say if you don't like it either?
No, well, because Bill Gothard, I have no time for him, and I don't believe in all their stuff. I might agree with some of their things. We overlap on some things, I'm sure. But the problem is, he overly controlling. The families that I knew that were ATI always had issues. It just was like they're just weird, and
So are we.
and we are, but we're a different kind of weird. But they are
A normal
very
kind of weird.
Well, I feel like the Bill Gothard thing, it's like you create the system.
Right.
And instead of, having the Holy Spirit be your guide and to try to, every
system's your guide.
every family's unique. Every
Right.
family,
Well, it's like the hedge laws.
Right.
I compared it to the hedge laws that, if you know what a hedge law is, you have the laws of Israel, but the not the Pharisees at the time, but the leaders, they would put laws around the laws to protect them. So they wouldn't get close to breaking the laws. So they called those hedge laws. And this is what Bill Gothard was. So it took like you said, the Holy Spirit. Like we dress a certain way. And our girls kind of look a lot like what you would see on the ATI thing. And but we weren't told to do that. We just were like, hey, I think this is what God wants us to do. And we're not pushing it on anyone. We're not making this a church rule and like this is how you have to dress. If you're saying this is how you have to dress, this is what you have to listen, you are now taking the Holy Spirit out of the equation. And when it comes to my kids, yes, I am doing that, because right now I'm telling them, you have to do this. You're not listening to this. Now, at some point, as they get older, they're going to have to make decisions for themselves, what they listen to and how they dress and all that. But as long as they're still under where we live and they're younger, they're going to have to listen to us.
Well, that's the difference between a relationship and a system. A religion. Yeah, because the religious system says that sets out rules, whereas a relationship, there's sort of there are rules, but there's also a kind of a give and take, if you will.
Right.
There's love involved. There's no love in a legal law system.
No, of course not.
It's you do this or you're punished. But in a relationship, you want to do something for someone because
you love them.
You love them. Yeah.
Right. So the big kicker, like you were saying, so then what was my problem with it? So like you could read about that. That happened years ago. The things with Bill Gothard, he actually got kicked out. And if you cared about that, and most of the world did not care, that more people cared about the Duggars, and that was what was the driving force in this. But that was very obvious too, what was going on, and was very public a couple years ago when he got thrown in jail. And so that was the big thrust of it. But behind the scenes, what was really going on was the agenda that Amazon is pushing. And it was so obvious. It was so clear. It was misrepresentations of certain things. It was taking things out of context and to spin it their way to make all Christians look stupid and bad.
Well, that's a good point, because some of the things they brought up, they were like, it was almost like they were saying disciplining and training your children is a bad thing.
Right.
Well, why is that a bad thing? That doesn't make sense. Or they were saying homeschool is bad.
Right.
Why?
Because
the public school is better? I mean,
Yeah. You you have these, mom and dad, they teach you, like, we were down in the basement and I'm like, what is this? I'm like, well, that's just, you're disgruntled. We get that.
Right.
But it's like, they're mocking them for believing in creationism, and
well, if you're a Christian, you should believe in that.
You should.
That's a foundational thing.
But it's going to be mocked.
I know. Yeah.
And so there's like this agenda that if you believe in what a man is and what a woman is, and that's not for debate,
right,
you're going to get mocked.
Yeah.
If you believe that one man and one woman should be married and not two men and not two women or whatever, you're going to be mocked. You're going to be looked at and be like, see, these are bigots. These people don't understand. They're fundamentalist, and you can just get all kinds of labels and dismiss them, and whatever.
Well, and that's the other thing. What is so bad about teaching your young daughters to be chaste?
Right.
and
That they were
modest.
mocking like sexual purity.
Yeah.
Like they want their daughters to be sexually pure and save themselves. I'm like,
And what's so bad about that?
You know, I think that's a good thing.
As opposed to what? I mean,
It seems like all these people had lost their faith.
Yeah, they did,
And
yeah.
it was unfortunate.
well,
And-
that's what I'm saying. That going back to is they put their faith in this religious system,
right. And it failed them.
And it failed them. And it
It failed them big time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was unfortunate. I mean, obviously, some of their stories were very uncomfortable to hear,
Yes.
and especially the ones that were sexually abused.
Right.
And it is tough to hear those stories. And yeah, your heart breaks for them. It's because not only, I don't know where they are. Maybe some of them are still believers in Christ. I don't know.
I don't know. It didn't indicate that they
Right.
were.
That wasn't part of it.
No.
It was just all about attacking Bill Gothard and what that created, which disturbed me that if you believe in any kind of authority, if you believe in any kind of conservative Christianity, that you got lumped in with the rest of ATI and
Yeah.
basically like if you do this, if you're a radical right-wing person, which I wouldn't even say I'm a radical right-wing person, I'm just right. No,
That's right.
If you're on that side of things, then if you believe X, Y, and Z, you're just like ATI. You're gonna be a sexual abuser. You're gonna be a emotional abuser. You're gonna
Right.
beat your kids. You're not a loving person.
Well, that is what they said. It seemed like if you're part of the IBLP or whatever these things are, that's what they breed is,
Right.
sexual predators and stuff. And I'm like, well, growing up, I wasn't part of any of that. And yet in my community and in my church, there was all of that going on there. And I'm like, nobody was homeschooling.
They
Nobody.
did make that point where because of the sexual purity push and the overemphasis on not looking a certain way, that they over-sexualized things, and that's what created Josh Duggar. Like he was one of 20. That's 5%. And I understand most of them were girls, but I said, I don't know. I go down to the ghetto. We did some ministry in the inner cities here in Louisiana, and they don't have any filters on their internet. They don't have any filters on TV. They watch whatever they want. They know what sex is and all that, and they get molested and they molest. And so I'm like, it happens everywhere. It's unfortunate. It shouldn't happen.
You know why it happens?
Because we're sinners.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Right.
Well, I mean, I think the stats are what 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 girls is going to be molested by the time she's 18, and most people aren't conservative Christians.
Right.
So I'm like,
Exactly,
it's happening other places somehow.
Right. It happens all over. It's terrible. It needs to stop. And but so to put all the blame that Bill Gothard's system creates an atmosphere for this, it may a little bit create that, but it's just not true that people believe the Bible, that people that are very conservative, they're not going to be predators. You have a handful of people, and they need to be taken care of. They need to be put in jail.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be out free. And if they're Christian leaders, like Bill Gothard, he should have been put out a long time ago.
Yeah.
But
He shouldn't have been even taken serious.
Well,
I mean,
Yeah.
honestly,
that's a whole nother. Like we said, I don't even know how we got to this point. But he was the man, and he was very creepy, and he had, if you watch the document, there were charges that were brought against him, and he won. He had his day in court, and supposedly won only because of statute of limitations. But so he claims victory. But we know people that personally were in his ministry, and they never claimed that he abused them,
Right.
but they did mention about petting of the hair and just all those creepy things that you heard about. And so it's like, yeah, I could believe it. The dude's a single dude, and he's got a drive, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And he evidently likes young girls, and that's bad news. And he should have been removed a long, long time ago. But that wasn't the piece. That was what they hid under. And who I felt really badly was for Jill, and I don't even know her husband's name. He didn't get much talking time.
Derek, I think.
Derek.
I think so.
The main people, that one of the Duggars, Jill Duggar, but it's not Jill Duggar anymore. they were exploited as children.
Right.
And never got paid for it. And they were exploited their whole life. Unfortunately, Amazon did the exact same thing to them.
Yeah.
Now they got paid probably, but they exploited them pretty much. As long as they got paid, right?
Yeah.
But they, unfortunately, Amazon used them for their agenda. So their dad used them for his agenda. But trust me, if you watch this documentary series, and don't think there's an agenda, then you need to grow up.
Right.
Of course there's an agenda, and you even if you know that going in, you just believe everything you see and read. We were reading. There was a couple in there that was one of the modern day YouTubers,
influencers,
right? Influencers that they just
Yeah.
labeled as just another one of these Bill Gothardaites, and they had a response, and we watched it this morning, and it was about 45 minutes, and they just basically ripped Amazon for tricking them, basically, and lying to them about what they were going after. And then using the stuff they used, and they said, "Look, we stand by what we say," but it was just like, you lied to us. And
yeah, that's another good point, because like they showed a clip of Michael Pearl, and when he went on Anderson Cooper and stuff.
oh yeah,
I'm like, you're going into their domain.
Yep.
And we know, the power of editing.
Yep.
If you're the one doing the editing,
you tell the story.
yeah.
Yep.
It's,
It don't care what it looks like. It's
and you can make it look like anything. I was watching a video the other day on YouTube about this movie, Zootopia. It was a kid's movie,
Sure.
an animated one.
if you say so.
Yeah, but they said Zootopia, but it was in 7 different movie genres. Like they did
Oh, okay.
comedy, then they did horror, thriller. It was all the same movie. It was just how they cut it and edited it to make it seem like something
Right.
it wasn't. And so you could do that. And
Yeah, well, this couple was interviewed for 4 hours. They talked to him. They got all these answers. They used 2 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
And they most of it was from things you could find on their YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And so it was lumped in. And that's what happened at the end. I think, especially that last episode, you saw their agenda very clear. Like
Right.
the reason why they were doing this whole thing was to get people to deconstruct Christianity.
And I will say, part of it wasn't necessarily false, because part of their theology, if you will, like the Duggars and stuff, they had that
Dominion now.
yeah,
Right.
kingdom now theology, where you have a lot of children to help populate the world with Christians, so that we can prepare the world for
But
Christ.
they made it sound like very sinister, like they're sneaking into politics and in all these high places of power.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think they're sneaking in. It's pretty clear what they're doing.
But the other side is doing the same thing.
That's the thing that was so disingenuous.
Yeah,
it was like all these right wingers, they're trying to take down abortion, and I'm like, you guys took it away first,
Right,
You know,
exactly.
so just remember that left has an agenda too.
Yeah.
And this was like their version of just trying to get around and have Christians rethink Christianity and deconstruct.
Right.
And because deconstruction is the word of the day, and these people obviously had deconstructed. It is just really sad that the message that Amazon, was pushing was really of one of politics, and that's very
Yeah.
clear in the last one, where the Joshua generation, which I've never heard of.
I never heard of that either.
The Joshua Project or whatever it was, that they're sneaking into politics. They're not sneaking. They have to get voted into these things, and
Right.
they make it very clear that they're running. And
and one of the things that they are winning, through teen, because they mentioned Teen Pack,
right.
which our kids did that stuff. But those people do win because they know how the system works, and they're educated, they're well spoken, so they do win.
Right.
And their arguments are solid. They have good, strong arguments.
Well, and then they had people like us.
Right.
I know we're not as big, but these Christian YouTube influencers
Right.
and TikTok influencers and stuff, perpetuating this thing. And I'm like, perpetuating what?
Yeah, exactly.
What are we perpetuating? We're here talking about Christianity and issues to deal with Christianity. We open up the Bible. We talk about the scriptures. We're not trying to put principles and leadership of one person. And I thought that was very disingenuous of them, too, is to lump all Christians. They basically made feel like if you're a conservative Christian, that you want to go this direction and you're going to be a sexual predator.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we have to look at all these people in places of power. They're sneaking in. And I'm like, there's a bunch of leftists in the government too.
How did they get in?
Right, they were just as radical on their side. You could tell these people were just as radical against Christianity and against what was going on. And they have a good reason. I get it. They were abused and they had their reasons. And it's very unfortunate that people like ATI give Christianity a black eye.
Yeah, that's the one of the sad part is those people now. How do you reach them? They're probably completely shut off to the gospel, and because their parents bought into false doctrine, false teaching.
Didn't know how to do it correctly or something.
Something went wrong.
Because, they kept picking on authority. And I'm like, well, I believe in authority.
Yeah, you have to have it. Society has to have authority.
I don't believe in lording it over people.
No.
And, all that. And to the way that ATI comes across, all that. But the Duggars and how they ran their home, I don't know. I don't care.
No, it doesn't
Honestly,
matter.
I don't care. I didn't watch the show. I was not interested in the least. Were you interested at all?
I mean, I found some of it interesting. I actually didn't like a lot of what they had to say about education when they were talking about making fun of people that homeschool and like the one girl that, just learned fractions and that was all she needed to know because then she'll know how to cook for her family, and I'm just like, and I know like homeschooling's a big thing, and there are definitely people that abuse it, and they don't homeschool their kids. They just they have them home and claim to be homeschooling, and there's no education going on, and that's a problem. But I'm like, for one, we live in Louisiana. I'm like, it wouldn't be better to put my kids in school. I'm like, how many people graduate our schools and can't read?
Well, that's not just Louisiana. That's all over the country.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like it's very important for me as a Christian to homeschool. But when I decide to homeschool, then it's like, okay, well, how do I do it?
But is ATI one of those at the forefront of trying to push women to get an education? Or was that just a one-off? Was that just a nice little story that they found and that was just that dad?
I think that was just that isolated. I mean,
I would hope so.
Yeah, because one side, what is so bad about teaching young ladies? I mean, I think the world, our Christians need good moms.
Cookers? Oh, is that what you're saying? Good bakers?
Well, that's what I'm saying. He's just saying, we need to learn to cook. That's what you're saying.
But it just fits all the stereotypes, and that's what the left doesn't like is the fact that a woman, has a role, and they don't like that.
Right.
A man has a role, and they don't like that. They want it all mixed up.
Yeah.
They want all the genders mixed up. They want everything mixed up, so there is no absolutes.
Right.
And when you have now, maybe the Gothard way of doing things was so rigid that, like, I don't believe that there's specific roles that like she has to sweep the floor. Like I can never sweep. Or she can never mow the lawn.
Well, in the video,
on.
When they were talking about that, it showed one of the Duggar boys laying on the couch while the girls were mopping the floor. Or something.
I didn't even notice that.
I was like, that is so bad. That is
right. Yes, that was
definitely.
I just feel like it's hard for any of us to determine how to educate our kids. Like it's a big, huge thing, and that's where I feel like we have to seek God and look around and seek counsel and get advice and whatever, and then we have to land where we're going to land and like, okay, this is what I'm going to think, this is what I'm going to put more emphasis on, this is whatever. And I don't know, I feel like it's a difficult thing, but it makes people feel like I don't know, just worried about how they're educating their kids.
Well, yeah, and speaking about like women or girls being educated, is it important that your daughter knows how to do calculus?
She wants to teach calculus.
But I mean, what practical? But if
What about me?
Well, yeah.
I mean, I never took calculus.
Yeah,
But
but
what my point
it's just
is-
a bad road to go down, because then it's like, well, does she need to know how to diagram sentences? Does she need to know
No.
the parts of a flower? Does
No.
she need to know?
No.
Well, I would say,
Well, I'm not very high in education, evidently.
well, no, but I mean, so there's some things that are more practical to learn.
Like fractions, so you can bake.
What? Well, just learning how to bake.
Using the word.
How
I don't
many?
think it means what you think it means.
How many? Not only girls but guys that can't find their way, figure out their way around the kitchen. If it's not something comes out of a box, you put in a microwave and push a few buttons. Learning practical things is something that's more useful than
Yeah.
learning.
But a guy can learn how to cook too.
Exactly. Yeah, I enjoy cooking.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
But what I'm saying is, yeah, I think the church needs, rather than teach your daughters to, or how do I say this? Send them off to college so that they can get a career,
Right.
and then be the wage earner or whatever. How about train them to be moms?
Well,
And-
that goes against the agenda.
Well, I know, but-
that's the issue.
Yeah.
They want to tear that down. They want to tear down the family structure. Something that's been around for thousands of years, and even the Christian pastor / author.
yeah.
Guy, what a joke that guy was. But we got to close it here pretty
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah. Okay. So
But
they
one more-
did talk about basically rules and standards and authority, and made those all seem like bad words.
Oh, yeah,
Like
that
those
was
were
funny.
bad
and,
things.
and it's not necessarily bad. Now, rules, standards, and authority can all be bad depending on. Yes, it could be. It could depending on what it is, but everyone has rules of some sort.
Yeah.
It's as if like they want their kids to just determine their own life, and like everybody. The fact that they don't take their kids to church is making a decision,
Yeah.
Right,
not to
you're-
teach them about God.
Yeah,
You know,
you're going to have some kind of rules,
Right.
And you can find abuse in anywhere, and from
Yeah.
So I mean, it's like there's no abuse in the Muslim community.
Yeah.
I mean, or even the atheist community. There's no abuse there. I mean that.
They're all just happy people.
Yeah,
They're just all happy. Well, the thing was, I guess the Duggar comes across as we're this perfect family.
Right,
So that's why, like, hey, these aren't really as happy and shiny as you think. But if you really thought that, you're probably an idiot. Like, I'm serious. Like, who is that really? I mean, everybody's got some kind of issue.
Every family has their issues, and that's the other thing. Just because it's a quote reality TV show doesn't mean it's real.
No,
it's staged.
It's staged, and they talk about how that's staged, and so there's nothing wrong with rules, standards, and authority,
You have to
depending
have
on how
those.
you present it, and it is biblical, it's scriptural, those things. If that was the one thing about ATI, they had too many rules, and I'm like, they're not fun. I like to have a little bit more fun. But did we have rules? I mean, I have a couple of my kids in the room. Did we have rules? Yes, we had rules.
Yeah. Well, you have to.
Well, we didn't have to have the rules we had, but we had rules.
Well, yeah, but I mean, society doesn't function without rules.
Right. No, but I would consider that we were pretty strict growing up. But there is a way to be strict and still have fun and
Right.
be real and be still in this society without looking like a weirdo.
Right.
And even though we probably look like weirdos, I don't know.
Probably.
But I don't know.
You
I
didn't wear the uniform.
I'm not very good at wearing uniforms. The problem with this also is like if you're thinking about watching it, you want to watch it with older people.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
some language in it,
Yeah.
not much, but it's strong language.
Yeah.
And the sexual content is heavy.
Yeah.
Because of the issues of what they're talking about and some of the stories they tell. If you've been sexually abused, it might trigger some things because it was tough for me to hear. And I'm like, good night, man. This is some of these things you're like, this is not, the story's not going in a good place, and so it does make you feel uncomfortable. But they did a very good job of portraying their agenda because
they
they took certain shots. Because trust me, the IBLP seminar is hours long, and they took just a few snippets, and the most cringy
Yeah.
one was the worst. It was terrible. It was so unbelievable that we were laughing. We're like, you got to be kidding me.
I know, I'm like, there's no way. But
It happened.
it happened.
And they're probably not ashamed of it when they should be. But anyway, they were showing how to spank a kid, and it was so bad.
It was.
Like, dude, get your hands off that boy. It was so bad.
Well, I mean, that's another. It's like, how do you get to that point where you think, oh, I'm gonna do this on stage in front of?
I don't know. All I could say was probably the 80s, and everything went in the 80s.
That's true.
It was like,
Yeah.
the 80s were.
I grew up during that
Yes, anything went
Yeah.
in the 80s. So anyway, I don't know. I would not suggest necessarily. I really wouldn't suggest watching it. It's if you were a big Duggar fan, you might want to watch it for that. For a wake up call. But I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
Just go into it knowing that's going to be biased against
oh,
you.
it's hugely biased
Yeah.
against people like us.
Right.
So if you're against us, then go watch it. Whatever. So, all right. Well, let's get out of this segment, Joshua, and let's either answer the email or watch a movie review.